Unseen costs are a major pitfall for beginner property investors. I'm talking about costs that aren't specifically mentioned by the seller, which can pile on additional expenses and drive down your overall return on investment. In this video, we'll talk about what those unseen costs are, how to check them, how to manage them, how to investigate them properly, and even discover a bit of unseen value in a property along the way. And last but not least, why have I come out to the Peak District, home of Blue John Cavern? This will all make sense in time. Stay tuned. Due diligence is a necessity in the property world, and while you can't rush into any investment, you still need to move fast. You need to conduct a thorough investigation on the property, research the area, talk to the seller, do everything that's in your power to accumulate enough information so you can finally grade the potential risk and reward of investing into that specific property. So, say you were going to invest in the property with a classic buy-to-flip strategy. You've factored in the right move costs and your refurbishment costs, and you've calculated you're going to get an ROI of about 10%. Now, you begin the refurbishment process and you discover that the plumbing is a bit out of whack. You're going to need to get a plumber to come in, got to pay the plumber. Your return on investment though has just gone down to 9%. Then you discover the electrics are out as well, old style fuse box that would need replacing. You need an electrician to come in, you pay the electrician, it goes down to 8%. And you discover more problems, you discover more problems, you discover more problems. This is why due diligence is so important. Because if you're not careful, your return on investment is going to drop back down to zero. You've just broken even. And in this economy, if this refurbishment has taken a long time, inflation has brought down the total value of your cash anyway. So you've actually ended up with a loss. Unseen costs are going to ambush you at every turn. So how do you avoid this? So, when the Angels Investment Group looks at a property, we have a number of key focuses when doing due diligence. The two big ones, as mentioned above, are plumbing and the electrics, but also, just as important, the property's structural condition. These are things that will require costly infrastructure overhauls and expensive, time-consuming labor to fix up into working order. And if they're left in poor condition, these factors can drive down the end value of a property. Let me stress this, if these three things are left in poor condition, these are the things that will drive down the end value of your property. And to make things worse, sellers could take advantage of your lack of knowledge if you're just beginning your property investment journey. So it is imperative to understand that plumbing, electrics, and structural overhauls are costly in both time and money. Trust me, if you haven't factored these things in, you do not want to discover them when you're at the point in negotiations where you can't back out. I'm not saying don't go for these properties when they have these problems. What I'm saying is you should know about these problems before you invest in the property, so you know exactly what you're getting into and you don't have to factor in any unforeseen costs. And as well, these are only the negative things to discover in due diligence. There can also be unseen value. After doing a due diligence on the property, we also scout out the surrounding area to discover if the area can bring up the property's value as well. Close connection to transport links, business parks, shops, and other facilities like gyms and local entertainment. And sometimes just a peaceful area without much noise, pollution, and human traffic. So sometimes there can be unseen value to cancel out the unseen costs. Every deal is different. What's important is that you do your due diligence and accumulate as much information as possible so you can formulate an investment plan with as few road bumps as possible. So, once we've done our due diligence on the property and the surrounding area, how do we grade its actual value? Well, for us, we use a grading system. The surrounding area, the property's utility and infrastructure, the property's appeal, the space. We take a large number of factors and grade them out of 5. 5 being the absolute best, 1 being the absolute worst. Now, something to keep in mind. If you go to a property and it's a 5 out of 5, everything about it is great. Surely that would make for a great investment, right? Well, you'd think so, but unfortunately no. If the property's already a 5 out of 5, then there's not really much you can improve upon. You're buying something for a high price and selling it for a very similar price. Very low percentage return on investment. It's usually not worth it. The properties you should be looking for have the cheapest possible price, cheapest possible refurbishment price, and highest gain in value. If you go to a property and with our grading system you end up rating utilities a 1 out of 5, but your location rating is a 5 out of 5, then as we mentioned above, while it could take a lot of work, you can add a lot of value to a property that's already in a very sought after area. But if your utilities are a 1 out of 5 and your location's maybe a 3 out of 5 or even a 2, I'd tread lightly because that deal sounds quite risky. So, to recap, unseen costs, if left undiscovered, are going to ambush your return on investment further down the road and run the risk of driving down the total overall value of your time and effort. The key to avoiding unseen costs is uncovering them through due diligence and then evaluating the property's true worth. For us, We use the 5-star grading system, but whatever system works for you, as long as you're considering the true value of the property and not just diving into something only to discover it's going to cost you more than you realized, then you're good to go. So, how does Blue John Cavern relate at all to property investment? Well, it all comes down to the mineral that actually gets mined from Blue John Cavern: Blue John. Blue John Cavern is the only place you can get the mineral Blue John. And I'm not just talking the UK, I'm talking the whole world. Blue John can only be mined from this specific point in the entire world. Now you must be thinking, well, that must make it extremely valuable, right? The scarcity on that must be insane. It must be more valuable than rubies and diamonds. Well, from a faraway glance, you'd think so. But upon closer inspection, Blue John actually has one severe fault. As a mineral, it's extremely soft. And minerals that are considered too soft don't even classify as precious stones. You can get diamonds and rubies from so many more places. You can only get Blue John from here. It should be the rarest. It is one of the rarest. But because it doesn't classify as a precious stone, next to diamonds, it's worthless. Blue John, in that sense, you could call it a fool's gold. From a faraway glance and hearing about Blue John, it must be very precious. It must be very valuable. But upon closer inspection, it doesn't even have half the value you think it should have. Unseen costs operate in the same way. A property can look amazing from afar, but without thorough due diligence and a close-up investigation, you will never know for sure. What you're investing in could be fool's gold. It could be Blue John. So, when you get to a property, you want to make sure you're checking the plumbing, electrical, and structural condition. If you know these things beforehand, you then want to factor these into your negotiation and build your return on investment plan around these things. If there's anything to take away from this video, it's this. These are the things you need to make sure you know before going into any investment. And not only that, when you get to a viewing, don't be afraid to be a pain in the ass. You know, this is not a social call, this is about money. When you get there, just go through this list of objectives and make sure you know everything you know. Sometimes when I get to a property, I do feel a bit awkward. The seller is maybe being a little bit pushy. I just want to get in and out, you know. Make sure you're going there and getting all the facts you need. There have been so many times when I've gotten back in the car and thought to myself, well, I could have checked this, I could have done this, I could have asked about this. You don't want to be in that position. Make sure you know all the facts.